Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everyone. My name is Francisco Picao. I'm from Language Access LLC, and I'm part of your interpretation team tonight. As part of its efforts to reach out to as broad a segment of the community as possible, DOTI organizes interpretations for many of the meetings that it organizes. It In order to take advantage of this service, if you have not gotten a chance to do so, please click on the globe in the bottom right of your screen for interpretation and select the language of your choice. Bienvenidos a todos y si como parte de su esfuerzo por extender el alcance comunitario en la ciudad, la organización DOTI ofrece servicios de interpretación al español. Si no ha usado este servicio anteriormente, por favor pulse el globito en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla y seleccione el idioma de su preferencia. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Chris.
Francisco, and I'll get you added to the interpretation channel as well here really quickly. All right. So with that, we'll get started. Good evening, everybody. You are at the March 6th, 2025 West Area Community Advisory Group meeting. For those of you who have not joined a Community Advisory Group or CAG meeting before, I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction. My name is Chris Callanan. I'm a community engagement specialist with the Denver Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. And through these CAGs, we communicate on kind of a regional basis for a variety of different active projects, programs, and services that we're delivering to and with the community across our kind of transportation and environmental infrastructure areas, as well as some of our utility services as well. We host these meetings on a regular basis. Right now, we're hosting them on a quarterly basis. And the kind of contours or the region of this CAG roughly follow the area of the CPD or Community Planning and Development Neighborhood Planning Initiative or NPI's West Area Plan. So we cover quite a few different neighborhoods, and we have historically focused quite a bit on West Colfax, but are looking to start sharing and publishing information about active projects on that kind of more regional basis with this group. So welcome, and I'm very glad to have you here, and thanks for taking some time out of your evening to join the department and learn about some different projects and programs in the area. So our agenda this evening is going to start with a couple of project updates. The first is at Decatur and West Holden Place with Rolando Melgoza, my colleague. And then the second update, which Rolando will also be giving, is about the Knox Court bikeway/safe streets project that spans from West Alameda Avenue to West 6th Avenue. After those project updates, we'll be going on to the Federal Boulevard Speed Program, which is an initiative that was launched last year through partnership with the Mayor's Office and DOTI. And then finally, I'll be sharing a very brief update on behalf of our partners at the Colorado Department of Transportation about the Federal Boulevard Bus Rapid Transit project. So with that, I will hand it over to Rolando to introduce himself and get started on his updates.
Thank you, Chris. Hey, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rolando Melgoza. I'm a community designer with DOTI. And tonight I have two updates on projects. One is at Decatur and Holden, and then the second one's going to be Knox Court. But let's start off with Decatur and Holden. So Decatur and Holden is the city's first raised intersection. This intersection was reconstructed last year to make it a safer intersection. If you look at the screen here, I'm a big fan of visual aids, so I tried to find the biggest picture possible to include here of the intersection. Think of it as a speed table. Think of it as a speed hump. Think of it as a speed cushion as you approach the intersection. Because it is raised about 3.5 inches tall, you slow down for it. It's also an all-way controlled intersection. In addition to that, we also designed purposely the intersection very tightly. So cars do have to navigate those turns a lot slower than one would do in a, I'm going to call it a typical regular wider intersection, right? Where you can take those turns a lot faster. And also, we added some bollards at the intersection that serve the purpose of protecting the pedestrians at the corners, and also for a little bit of an aesthetic treatment to make it look prettier. So this intersection's built. Why am I bringing it up this evening? Because community has let us know, the Sun Valley has told us that the bollards were being hit, and specifically in the northwest corner there. So I put a red circle, the northwest corner of the intersection. Chris, let's go to the next slide. So there's our bollard right there being hit. But the concerns that we heard and that we also verified by doing a field visit in late January is that as the buses making the southbound right turn are striking the bollards, those are the buses you see in the picture there. The one on the left, it's larger, longer articulated buses there. So they're having some challenges going through there. Also, when the southbound right turn buses are making their turn, if there happens to be an eastbound vehicle stopped at the all-way stop, the bus cannot make that turn right, because as they turn that corner, the eastbound vehicle is essentially in the way there. And so we no one's going to point fingers at the designers or anything like that. We wanted to get into brainstorming what some possible solutions could be. The most obvious thing when we were out there is every like minute, 2 minutes, we saw buses making that turn. So it's not like we had to use our imaginations and figure out where could they possibly be going. No, every single bus coming through there, we could follow the wheel path of where they were traveling through the intersection. And so that gave us a really good idea on how far back we would have to move the bollards and the truncated domes. The truncated domes are those for visually impaired, so they can see and also feel. It's a tactile treatment at the intersection so that they are ADA compliant to move all of those back. So our plan right now is to set up sort of a test where we put temporary cones out there where the new curb would be pulled back to, and just sit and observe to see if if the wheel paths would now clear where that new curb line would be. Something we do have to watch out for is, of course, drainage. There's always drainage, there's always water, right? We want to make sure to stay clear of the inlet that's existing in that northwest corner, because anytime we have to touch drainage, there's just a huge cost associated with it. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. We do not have exactly what that design is going to look like other than big picture. Essentially what we're saying now is anything that's getting hit, let's try to push it back. So that includes the bollards, the truncated domes, and then we also have 2 pedestrian poles there. Right now, we're working with our consultant to finalize scope and fee, and then we're going to work on the fun part for us, which is the funding portion of it. And I don't know if Gene is on here, but Gene, you will get a preview of everything before we let everyone else know. And I see Glenn, you have a question, please.
Hello, Rolando. So for everyone on the call, the two flags there on the left, in the left photo, is my location. And I have had this location since 2012. So I'm very, very aware of what is happening at this intersection. Respectfully, Rolando, I would just like to clarify that the intersection has not been made more safe. It is actually less safe now than it was before. And that the claim to have the first raised intersection in the city as a traffic calming measure is not working. So there are multiple issues more than just the bus navigation going on in this intersection. People now, as opposed to how it was before, can actually turn and do a complete circle in the intersection, and people often do. So there are multiple safety issues that we're experiencing with this design of the intersection that need to be addressed. So I just want to state that for everybody in the group, because I don't want anybody to think we're in a better place than we were after all of this work has been done. Okay. I appreciate the idea of moving the bollards, but the lights are going to have to be moved as well, because the buses are then just going to hit the lights. So everything is going to have to be pushed back. When you met with RTD, did they entertain the idea of changing the route? Because this is not the street this street was never designed to handle articulated buses. So the city, you guys have to come out and repair this street on multiple times throughout the year, because the buses cause depression in the material, so much so that sometimes cars get stuck and bottom out. It's that dramatic. So did RTD entertain the idea of changing the route so that this street doesn't have to accommodate the articulated buses just turning around?
That is not an idea, Glenn, that that RTD discussed with DOTI at our meeting. I don't want to speak for RTD, but they were there with us, and I know that they took all of the concerns back to RTD. When we regroup, and when I say we, DOTI and RTD, we will review the list of all of the concerns that you sent us, that we observed while we were out there, and go one by one to see what we can report back. But as of now, rerouting anything, I have not heard anything. One thing I will say about the buses, though, that RTD did tell us. So we brought up articulated buses. When they said that it was the shorter ones. I call them the shorter ones. I'm sure there's an official name, right? The non-articulated buses, that those were the ones impacting the bollards more than the articulated buses.
I would have to disagree, because I've witnessed 4 times the articulated buses getting jammed up and stuck there and damaged. I've never seen one of the shorter ones.
Okay, and when you say that they're getting stuck, is it because they're hitting the bollards, or because they're bottoming out on the raised intersection?
No, they're hitting the bollards. So
so if we move them, then that would remedy that, right?
it would remedy some of the issues, but not all of the issues.
It would remedy the issue of the buses striking the bollards, right?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
But as I mentioned to you also, in the wintertime, when that street is frozen, the buses can't make it up the street. So then they have to back down the entire street to re-navigate to get out of the neighborhood, So there's multiple issues, I think.
Okay.
Rather than just the bollards.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that, Glenn. I saw another hand go up, and then I saw it go down. Oh,
Hi.
there you are. Hi, Jean.
It's Jean. Hi, thank you. I guess, is there a contact for RTD? It doesn't sound like they're going to be at the meeting when you meet with us, but I guess, we've had conversations with them before. They had the bus stop in a very bad place and we got that moved. So we just don't have anyone to talk to. And I guess if it's not something that, DOTI wants to pursue, I think that as a neighborhood, we'd at least like to bring it up with them and hear what they have to say about why they wouldn't, reconsider just using that as, just using that route. And then there's other routes, I think, because, with all the development, we have some pretty isolated, like a senior building coming up that's going to be very isolated. And we just wanted to, I think, have a conversation with somebody about, kind of what's happening and what the needs might be so that we can do that sooner rather than later.
Thank you for that, Jean. So two things. One is uh, when it comes to this, I am your contact. I promise you that I bring up everything to RTD, and RTD has not said that they would not attend any follow-up meetings, and I say that because I have not scheduled a follow-up meeting with them, right?
Okay.
And so I'm your contact there. And then I also want to make it clear that in the discussion of repairing the bollards, and let's make sure that the bollards are not hit. Let's make sure that the pedestrian lights are not hit. That was where our conversation is right now. If there is a conversation happening with DOTI, or I'm sorry, with RTD internal to RTD about rerouting, that's a conversation that's happening with them. So I don't want to say either way that yes, they are doing it. No, they are not doing it. So let's hold off on that just a little bit. I think if anything, the takeaway right now is that there needs to be a follow-up. I know that from the public's point of view, um, when design is happening, there's stuff on the surface and there's stuff below the surface, literally here that we want to avoid impacting any drainage. That's a lot of detailed design work. That's a lot of cost estimation. And then, like I jokingly said, there's the funding portion of it. So I know it takes a second, and I know that we want to jump to other things there, but let's focus, let's make our next step be on an update where I can talk to RTD, talk to our consultant, see where we are in that scope fee, and then let's take it from there.
Oh, okay. I guess, this has come up as a possible bond project to, it's unfortunate, but I think we do need some improvements of the improvements. And so it's come up as a possible bond project. If that's not, and Councilwoman Torres was present when that was brought up. She even mentioned it. Then I guess we need to talk if it's not appropriate to go as a bond, or if we just bring it up and it falls where it needs to. But I know that there will be costs associated with it. And I guess we'd like to have a little discussion about that sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you for that. And then Jean, just for my notes, when you're talking about a possible bond project, are you talking about redesigning the intersection again?
No, well, hopefully it wouldn't take that, but I think that, what Glenn brought up is that it's really not safer. It's really not slowing down traffic or even calming traffic. In fact, we've had more issues with it than we did before. And so the bus is one, certainly, but I think, using it as, for U-turns pretty much all times of the day. Not just
Okay.
at night when nobody's around, but all times of the day, people use it and make U-turns in it. And just some general things. I don't know, but I think that, we were told that capital improvements is what the bond's about. And if we have problems with even our more recent bond project, which was that we should add that to the list. So I guess we'd like to talk about that. I mean, I would prefer not to be spending money, correcting what has already took not a lot of money and a lot of time to do. But if we need to, then, we'll add it to it till we get it right.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot more going on in this conversation, and maybe I need to put a
Yeah.
brief pause on repairing the bollards because there's a whole other thing here. And just for my knowledge, I started with the city after this project had already gone through the design process. There was data collected to support the need to improve this intersection, yes? Okay. All right.
But there were multiple options presented to us, including a roundabout. But at that time, years ago, 8 years ago, a roundabout installation would have taken property, mine included. And now we see much smaller roundabout scenarios that might fit within this intersection. So yes, there was lengthy discussions and many options and lots of
Well,
involvement.
and this was part of the whole, 2017 bond. It's called the 13th Avenue realignment. And our primary goal there was to, well, it was really to try to, it ended up to be getting Bryant Street, so that we had something with the park. The concern was, it wasn't so much the community's concern, but I guess DOTI and the city councilman at the time, is that, a street that was an intersection where the streets weren't aligned, was not okay. And so that was what was put in there and envisioned by, other than us. And then it was kind of brought back to us that, because while we didn't look at increasing the size of the intersection, our plan was not to really change it, the communities. But it came back where it was, it wasn't aligned, in the final design. And so, yeah, we went through a whole lot of configurations that were mostly told to us what would work or what wouldn't work.
Okay. And that's very true. Sometimes you're limited with right of way, like what Glenn said, he's right on that corner there, and a roundabout would have taken up a lot more room at the designs of roundabouts back then. Okay, so it sounds like this needs to be a much larger conversation. I was under the impression that we were repairing this corner here, and focusing on possibly some enforcement, allowing time for driver behavior to adjust to this new setup. But it sounds like the community has been speaking other plans on a complete redesign. And if so, I haven't been made aware of that, so I'm gonna have to take that
I
back.
won't say that as much as we've had things like people have asked for speed bumps. I think what they're trying to do is just slow down traffic on Decatur. And the intersection as it's configured has not really achieved that, and so I'm not sure I mean, nobody wants to go through what we went through with construction for the last 5 years. Nobody does. But I mean, people have talked about having a traffic light or, having speed bumps. So I don't think anybody's wanting to, tear everything up and start over. And I don't think anybody,
Sure.
So I don't know that it would prohibit necessarily moving ahead with the bollards. But I don't know what it takes, to add a traffic light or, some other safety measures that wouldn't necessarily mean a complete reconfiguration.
Understood. Okay, that makes enough sense if that makes sense, right?
Does that sound fair, Glenn?
Yeah, definitely. And I've researched flashing stop lights, stop signs that are solar controlled. And I mean, I would be willing to purchase them if we could get them installed. I mean, it's just there's a real need to address the issues in the intersection. And Chris is on the call, Chris Rollerson as well, so she can kind of attest to all this too.
And Chris is with the youth center that's right across the street on the other corner from Glenn.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all the suggestions on what could possibly be done. There's a key step missing here. It sounds like the decisions that were made to build this intersection was based on data. It was based on community input, right? Before we start saying this isn't working, speeds didn't slow down or anything, um, I would feel more comfortable with that same data being collected an after study, as well as community feedback, and then we can go from there. So let's leave this one as there's more conversation that needs to happen. Jean, Glenn, I really appreciate the additional information that you have brought to light this evening. And I will, once I'm done talking here, I'm gonna make sure to send that over to my supervisor so we can get that started.
If you don't mind, can I just ask if Chris has anything she wants to add, since this is really the first time we've been able to interact with you on it, Chris?
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have said my concerns just the same. So we didn't want a roundabout. We were like, there's got to be a better solution. We talked about having fun art in the middle of the intersection to slow people down so people realize that it's actually an intersection. There has been zero change to the amount of people that just do not stop at that corner. Zero change. People just blow right on through it. And there's so many scooters and bikes in the neighborhood too, from like Lyft and Bird and all of that. Somebody's going to get killed, and it's going to be a kid who's crossing because we don't even have a school in our neighborhood. So they're all crossing that intersection to get to the school bus, and it's just not safe. So there needs to be something done, and it needs to be fairly urgent. The buses still can't clear the corner. They actually hit the bollards, which you guys probably talked about already. Like same exact problems as before that we're finding as a neighborhood continue to exist. So yeah, I think follow-up would be great. And I don't know that it was like the most successful community engagement process, because everything that got presented to us, we were like, nope, that's not going to work. And I think we were all surprised to see that the intersection basically stayed exactly the same after all that conversation. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Chris. That's really helpful. Yeah, let's continue the conversation. I'm really curious what was presented that the community said, no, that's not going to work. No, that's not going to work. Lots of not going to work, but it sounds like the community has an idea of what would work.
I will just share that we told DOTI all along that the buses could not make that turn. So it's nothing new that we have not brought up, you know.
And I think that we really, when we heard the raised intersection, I mean, that was intriguing, but I think, you know, I mean, even some of our city officials that I won't name looked at it and said, I thought it was supposed to be raised. So nobody sees it as a raised intersection. In fact, people look at the sign and they go, so where is it raised? I don't think that any, you know, and I understand that you can't just raise it, you know, a foot, and then people couldn't, you know, I mean, there's only so much you can do, but nobody experiences it as a raised intersection. And the fact that people can just continue to blast through, I think also kind of illustrates that, you know, it's not really a calming mechanism.
Okay.
And I will, I just want to interject a little bit, because I do think that it sounds like this begs a larger conversation. And we do still have another project update with 2 others after that. So I want to kind of keep the conversation moving, but yeah, it sounds like there's quite a bit of opportunity here to have more dialogue, and I would be interested in kind of staying engaged in it as well.
Thank you, Chris. And Jean, I'm gonna take you to my next public meetings in other parts of the city just because people tell me that everything's too tall and you're saying it needs to go
No,
taller. So
I've
I need you to be that balance in the world.
I know I've listened to some of the complaints about the speed bumps. So I
Right.
don't know what the right is, but yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Chris. More to come on that. And with that great intro, let's go over to Knox Court where we will talk about speed cushions. Chris, next slide, please. Uh, So Knox Court, which is also on the west side of the city, it's 6th Avenue on the north end, and then the south end is Alameda Avenue. It was part of our Safe, Slow bike paving program where we improved the safety of the existing bike lanes to include buffered bike lane, modify some of the on-street parking in this section. But the speed cushions there is what I want to focus on. So it's the last component that is part of this overall bikeway enhancement and also slowing of the vehicles along Knox Court. Speed cushions are different from what you may know as speed bumps. Think of a speed bump as something you would see in the grocery store parking lot, right? Very aggressive, where you practically have to come to a complete stop. The speed cushions are a gentler, more parabolic shape that are very effective at slowing down cars. They also have cutouts, as you can see in this picture here, where emergency vehicles can pass through those cutouts. So it's wide enough to accommodate the wheelbase of, say, the fire trucks, but too wide for the vehicles that you and I would drive on Knox Court, and we would have to slow down to traverse them. Construction is underway right now. We jokingly say that if there's ever a drought or anything, the best way to end the drought is to schedule a picnic, an outdoor wedding, or the installation of speed cushions. So I believe as of today, we might have half of the new speed cushions on Knox Court finished. So just know, I think tomorrow I think the weather, it might snow and it whatever, but we are about halfway done. Once those speed cushions are installed, it is standard practice for our city inspectors to go back on site and inspect each individual cushion one by one to make sure that there is a maximum height at the center of the cushion of 3.5 inches tall. Any cushion which does not meet those specifications will be modified, adjusted so that they are a max height of 3.5 inches. And that's at the max point. Keep in mind, it's a parabolic shape that goes over that. I just wanted everyone here on the call to know about that project going on in case you're driving on Knox Court and you're like, what is going on here? So that's it. Any questions? Yes, Maya.
Oh, yes. Hello. Can you hear and see me okay?
Yes and yes.
Okay. So my husband uses the Knox Court as his path to work every day on his bike. So he's a daily commuter on Knox Court. And he was very excited to see the speed cushions. Said it does seem to be like slowing traffic down. He did have a couple comments, just some feedback on what some of the driving patterns he's noticed is. One is related, I guess. So I guess those are like bollards that are at some of the like turning area. One by like the turn to 6, like over the bridge, or pylons. Yeah. Those are, I guess some of them have already been knocked down at that turn. Okay. And then I guess, the last couple days, or maybe it was yesterday, he said that he just noticed people were kind of going into the bike lane to like avoid the speed cushions. So we were kind of wondering, is the city,
Okay.
are they planning on putting more like barriers where you can put down, like I know on one side it's like the bike lane and then parking, but where it's just the bike lane, can you make that more separated? Are there plans to do that?
Yes. Thank you for that, Maya. There are I could talk for the next hour, but I won't for Chris's sake, right? But so long story short, thank you for telling us about the bollards. One thing to keep in mind is so Knox Court is still an active construction project. So w- once the construction portion is finished, then the assets that is Knox Court gets transferred over to the owners, which is us, right? But thanks for letting me know. I'm gonna let our team know about that, and hopefully we can get those fixed. And then the other thing about where we can place vertical elements, bollards, if we can add all of that, that's part of our um, field visit afterwards, just seeing how everything's functioning. So everyone, the more data, the more information, like this is very helpful for us. And I'll leave that at that. So I got this written down and I will share that with our design team.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
guess the only other thing I would add is that people, still, pretty much there are lots of people still park in the bike lane. Yeah,
Okay.
that is still,
Okay.
still happening. So you kind of have to go around it.
Okay, good to know. And like I said earlier, so I'm taking Jean to the meetings, I'm taking Maya to the meetings here as our customers, right? Of letting people know the different views that we have here. But okay,
Thank
Chris,
you.
thank you. Before I hand it back over to you, I don't know if there are any other raised hands.
Not that I see. I did see Polar Planet in the chat, just kind of
Okay.
echoing Maya's sentiment. So
Okay, great. And I'll hang out for the rest of this meeting too. So if anyone comes up with any questions, I'll be reviewing the chat.
thank you so much, Rolando.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. So next up, we have an update on the Federal Boulevard Speed Program from my wonderful colleague in DOTI's Office of Community and Business Engagement, Elizabeth Santiago.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Chris. And if you wouldn't mind helping me monitor the questions that come in, I'm going to look at a different screen here.
Absolutely.
All right. So hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for your time this evening. My name is Elizabeth Santiago, and I am DOTI's Vision Zero Program Administrator. So I'm really focused on our traffic safety efforts and community engagement in that process. Chris, if you'll go to the next slide, please. So it sounds like we've got a pretty engaged group here. Love to see it, but just in case anybody is less familiar, let's just kind of zoom out a little bit and talk about high level, what are DOTI's safety goals? So we have this comprehensive plan through Denver Moves Everyone that really outlines DOTI as a leader in building a world-class transportation system by the year 2050. And that really thinks about how do we move people around in a safe way through quality systems that also elevate community voice and emphasize sustainability. And within that, there are two philosophies that I'm going to talk about. Vision Zero, that might be familiar to you all. It's a long-term safety vision that aims for safety for all, no matter who you are, where you're going, how you're trying to get there. Everyone deserves to arrive safely. Everyone deserves safe streets. And so the goal with that is to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries by the year 2030. But within that, there was a new sub-goal that was created around the speed program. And we're going to talk about the speed program a little bit more. But the overall goal of that is to reduce traffic fatalities by 50% on Federal and Alameda specifically. This is where we're piloting the program by 2026. So we're trying to address speeding on these high-risk corridors. It's a coordinated effort between DOTI, the Department of Safety, the Office of social equity and innovation, and of course we have the mayor's support behind it as well. It's comprised of a series of interventions that we'll get into a little bit more, but they're all aimed at helping the city reach their transportation safety goals. Something else I want to highlight for folks is our safe systems approach, and that is the graphic that you'll see to the right. It is a system that is designed and is operated to anticipate human mistakes, mitigate the severity of crashes, and decrease the likelihood of injury or death should a crash occur. So within that system, we've got safe road users, safe vehicles, post-crash care, safe streets, and safe speeds. And we're really going to talk more about safe speeds today. Chris, if you will go ahead and go on to the next one. All right. So yeah, again, that safe system prioritizes anticipating human errors, reducing speeds to decrease crash severity. And I'm going to present some numbers to you today, but I also want to preface this by saying these aren't just numbers. These are people. These are our community members. These are residents, our family, our friends, and it could just as easily be you and me. So we talk about in DOTI having a data-driven approach, and these are some of the things that we're looking at. The number of traffic-related deaths in our area. And while you'll see that, Denver is kind of squarely in the middle, and that, is a positive thing to see. When we say zero, we mean zero. And so as of 2024, there were 77 traffic fatalities in Denver, and that is just far too many. And so safety is really the highest priority for all of our infrastructure projects. We know that strategies that promote slower and safer speeds, that separate spaces for people moving at different speeds, and increase the visibility of those we share the road with are all helping us reduce these trends that we're seeing. Chris, if you'll go ahead and go on to the next one. So what role does speed play in safety? Why are we talking about speed so much? Well, speeding is a contributing factor in approximately 1/3 of all fatal crashes. And this has been consistent for the past couple of decades. We know that high-speed crashes are deadly. That's what the evidence shows us time and time again. So lower speeds are directly correlated to increased survival should you be in a crash. And why is that? What are the factors involved in speeding that make it so dangerous? First, visibility. When you're going faster, that cone of vision that you have is significantly reduced. So you can't see all of the things around you, those people that you're sharing the road with, people on bikes, people on scooters, people in wheelchairs, children. Also reaction time. By the time that you are able to, see that person in front of you, if you're going at a higher speed, it's going to take you a longer time to slow down. That's just the physics. Same thing with impact forces, going at a higher speed. And something not noted here, but I do want to address, cars are getting bigger. So higher speeds, bigger vehicles, that all increases the impact force and is more likely to hit someone instead of in the torso, higher up in the head. And that is just so, so dangerous. All right, on to the next slide, please, Chris. So let's talk more about the SPEED program and how it's creating safer streets. SPEED is an acronym. It stands for saturating corridors with speed limit signs and speed feedback signs. So what does that mean? We have increased the number of actual speed limit signs on Federal and Alameda, as well as the driver feedback signs. Those are the signs that flash your actual speed at you. This is to provide a visual reminder of the speed that you should be going. We really want to encourage people to slow down. The P is for programming traffic signals to slow down vehicles to the posted speed limits. So engineering has been a big part of this. How we think about our signal timing plays a role in slowing folks down. We have also done some special engineering, engineering the signal timing at night. We don't want folks to just be going as fast as they can at night when there's, maybe less stuff on the road and you're hitting those green lights. we don't want people just zooming down Federal or Alameda. So we're really trying to encourage them to slow down with that signal timing change. Another area where signal timing has been a benefit is giving pedestrians more of a head start to cross the street before the light turns green. So we're trying to reduce those points of conflict, or there's opportunities for conflict between a motor vehicle and a pedestrian, a person walking, a person biking. And another part of this that has not yet happened, so everything in the speed is something that's already been implemented on Federal and Alameda, but that D has not yet happened. And that involves deploying speed enforcement. So that could be fixed speed enforcement cameras, but also the mobile speed vans. And this is an area where we really want to understand what concerns, what questions community has around this particular mitigation effort. Chris, if you will go on to the next one. Actually, one quick thing on the cameras. Part of why we're looking at this effort is because we've seen it work well on 6th and Lincoln, for example. There's a red light camera there. And since it's been implemented, we've seen crashes decrease by 52%, total crashes overall, and crashes that led to an injury decreased by 80%. With mobile units, we've seen about a 21% reduction in excessive speeding. And so that's why we're looking at this as one of the tools in our toolbox that we can use to help us reach our safety goals. The community is also a big part of this. So how is DOTI bringing community into this effort? In a couple of different ways. We're really thinking about equity. We've partnered with the Office of Social Equity and Inclusion to help us establish and evaluate equity impacts. We know that Federal and Alameda are crossing communities that could be disproportionately impacted by speed cameras in particular. And so we really want to be mindful of that. This is not a cash grab. We are not trying to do some kind of revenue generating effort here. This is a safety effort. We know that the speed cameras can help us in our goal to save lives. And so that's why we're considering them as part of this pilot program. We're also looking to other subject matter experts in the field to ensure best practices. So we're reviewing and incorporating those recommendations into our work. And for engagement opportunities, we really want to hear from the community. We have been at different pop-up events. We're attending public meetings like this one, and soon we will be conducting focus groups. We're actually going to have a few different phases of focus groups, some that will happen before the cameras are ever implemented. We really want to hear from community before DOTI moves forward in that effort. And then also after camera implementation, what are you seeing? What worked? What didn't work? Should we continue this? Should we see it in other areas? We really want to hear from community and get their perspective on what's working and what's not. There's also been a marketing campaign launched to raise awareness and encourage safe driving practices. If you're driving along Federal, then perhaps you've seen some of the billboards that have gone up. It's for the love of safety, and you can even take a pledge to say that you will help model those safe driving behaviors and be a leader in the community and do your part in that area. So again, with this, we want to ensure that we are addressing the disproportionate impacts on vulnerable communities, preventing further degradation of trust, and mitigating the legal or financial burden on the communities. This is really meant to be a benefit to community to help save lives. And so if there are concerns that you have about it, we want to hear from you on that. And Chris, will you go to the next slide, please? So here, just some information on how you can reach us. The denvergov.org Vision Zero will take you to a page with more information about all of our safety efforts, including the speed program. And then the OCD at denvergov.org is where you can send your questions, comments, concerns at this time. We have not yet scheduled those focus groups, but as soon as we have them on our calendar, then we can pass that information along to you in case you want to actually attend and participate. And that's everything that I have.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Curious if folks on the call have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback. No.
I do.
Elizabeth,
Hi.
go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Elizabeth, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the Office of Social Equity and Inclusion and their recommendations for folks. I know our office got into briefing on it, but that might be helpful.
I am not able to go into the details at this time.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. No, it's something, full transparency. We're still working through some of those details.
Oh, okay.
But I know that Elena, our legislative affairs lead, has been working with the council offices to kind of help navigate some of those conversations that we're thinking about, some of those decision points that we're thinking about.
Yeah.
As soon as we have more to share, happy to share it.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry to jump the gun on that. I just thought those were
Not at
interesting
all.
recommendations and it was good to hear them. Okay.
Brian. All right, I saw Jean's hand up first, and then we'll go over to Hannah.
Hi, I think I know what they are, but did you describe what a speed camera is? I just want to make sure I'm understanding, because I know there's several things that can take pictures.
Sure, and great question. Apologies for not being more clear on that. So a speed camera and what we will be potentially implementing has not yet been decided. Again, there are fixed cameras on the light. They're stationary. It's a device that'll help capture anybody who's speeding over a certain threshold. And with the mobile units, that can be moved around more easily, but they're essentially doing the same job, trying to capture anyone who is going over a certain speed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, over to you, Hannah.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that as someone who travels Federal and Alameda daily, I think the most effective pieces I've seen are the timed stoplights. They're not inconvenient, but they certainly do keep you from reaching a top speed of 40, 45 before you're back down to 0. So as far as all the parts of the speed program you just described, the one I've seen to be most effective is, and I didn't realize it was happening until you just told me, but yeah, totally, is the stoplights timing.
Glad to hear that feedback. Glad that that's working. Thank you.
Yeah, we also did those signal retimings on West Colfax right before the construction started and saw a pretty staggering improvement in safety on that corridor as well. So appreciate you kind of noting that as well, Hannah. Awesome. Any other comments, questions for Elizabeth? No. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks, Elizabeth. All right, and we are staying right on schedule, which is wonderful. So I have a quick update from our friends at the Colorado Department of Transportation, or CDOT. For folks who might not be aware, the Colorado Department of Transportation, CDOT, is launching this entire Denver Metro Bus Rapid Transit program, or BRT program. And in addition to East Colfax getting a BRT, Federal Boulevard has been identified for this type of improvement to add some more consistency and reliability, as well as some safety elements along the corridor through the city and county of Denver. The BRT will span Federal Boulevard across 3 different municipalities. So it is not just for Denver per se, but DOTI, the Denver Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, is certainly here to kind of help facilitate communication between our communities and the department outside of kind of some more of the traditional engagement opportunities that CDOT has available to weigh in on the project. So for this bus rapid transit project on Federal Boulevard. I did just want to bring a quick update to this group so that you're aware. The project is working through 30% design, which basically just means it's 30% of the way through its kind of implementation process. They are hoping to start construction in 2027, I believe, on the federal BRT, last I heard. So the different design elements of the project are kind of being worked through right now. The latest kind of opportunity for our community to get engaged in the process is specifically around the station design. So for those of you who might not be as familiar with BRTs, the idea is to have kind of regular stations throughout the corridor where folks can kind of hop on and hop off these buses as they come around. The current kind of time frame for bus service at these stops is supposed to be around 15 minutes. So the idea would be less route planning, more showing up at the bus stop and being able to rely on a bus coming every 15 minutes. So these bus stops are going to be really important kind of stations for the BRT project along the corridor. And the CDOT team is actively designing what these stations will look like. I know, Jean, we've had some conversations about station design and location along the corridor, and I've passed those comments along to the CDOT team, but there will be a telephone town hall for other folks who might have comments or feedback for CDOT in this kind of design time frame on stations. So I wanted to make sure that this opportunity is marketed and promoted out in the community that'll be impacted. So you can either call in to this telephone town hall, which will be on Tuesday, March 18th at 6 p.m., or there's also the option to join via Zoom, and that Zoom link is in the meeting chat. I'll copy that here really quickly. Copy link, just so that folks have that in the chat. And then outside of this town hall, they also have provided some of these contact methods. So there's an entire web page committed to both the federal BRT, but all of the other BRTs that are occurring in the Denver metro area as well. And then a hotline and an email line as well to reach out to if you have any comments, feedback, suggestions that might be outside of their traditional engagement opportunities. And with that, any questions or comments on the federal BRT? Might not be able to answer them in the moment, but I can definitely help get folks connected with the project team if helpful. Great. Well, outside of that update, I wanted to share just our upcoming meeting schedule. So we obviously just had our March 6th meeting, and we're meeting on a kind of every 3 months basis right now. So our next scheduled meeting is going to be on June 5th. Ooh, Mike, great question in the chat about the West Denver connector. For folks who may have missed the last meeting, the West Denver connector is almost a public version of Lyft or Uber kind of ride hailing apps that we've launched here in the west area of town. So I will follow up with the kind of group that received this meeting information with that presentation, but I'll also invite them to our June 5th meeting because at that point, we'll have had about 5 or 6 months of service under our belt. So it might be nice to kind of have the West Denver connector come and present on what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and collect any feedback on the service now that it's launched and had a little bit of time. Hopefully that's helpful, Mike. And then, yes, thanks for promoting it, Mike. So our next scheduled meeting is going to be on June 5th. That being said, I have been in conversation with 2 of our teams that are working on environmental infrastructure projects within this west area. And those are basically stormwater or flood mitigation projects within the Valverde Stormwater Basin and the Weir Gulch Trail area. So I am going to be working with them to see if it makes sense to have kind of an as needed meeting here between March and June. So keep an eye on your inbox for information about a meeting if they're receptive to that idea, depending on where they're at in their project stages. And yeah, just want to say thank you everybody for showing up this evening and the productive conversations. And we'll certainly be following up to kind of keep those going on some of these items, especially that Decatur and Holden intersection as well. Awesome.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and feel free to reach out if there's anything that I can do to facilitate in the meantime.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.